Well, we are so happy to welcome back Captain Duncan Hood to our CAPCA meeting. We're very lucky this year because Captain Hood joined us in January and told us a lot about the refit he had with the 48-volt integral system that he did along with Nick Duff from Marine Electric Systems. And now we're going to do something a little bit more fun with talking about his recent trip. It was a 7-week, 1,200-mile journey from Annapolis, Maryland to Lake Champlain on his Cherubini 48 schooner named Adventurer. And so we're going to hear about that. But first, you have to know a little bit more about Captain Duncan. So let me tell you about that.
There's more?
There's more. Captain Hood has been a professional sailboat captain and instructor evaluator for the American Sailing. It's not association anymore, though, just American Sailing since 1984. Over the years, Duncan has sailed and taught and lectured in China, Japan, Canary Islands, Poland, the Bahamas, Virgin Islands, and in 20 states in the US, which is something I would like to also do. I have to see how you did all that. A popular lecturer, teacher, and captain. He currently owns and operates Adventurer 56, well, now we know LOA, Cherubini schooner. Captain Hood is also chair of the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race and has participated in this event since 2001. The mission of the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race is to raise money to restore the bay waters by donating the proceeds to the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to you, Captain Hood, and tell us about this trip.
Well, all right. Hey, thanks. It's so great to see all you guys here and so many familiar and friendly faces and make some new friends. As we get going, Vicki, do we have screen sharing on?
We do.
Good. All right. Well, let me preface the whole thing by saying, sometimes people ask why we chose Champlain. So let's switch over here and see what we got. So here we go. And in perfect land, you will be able to see, doink, a black box. Am I right?
Yes.
How fascinating. Let's do this thing. I love that. All right. Having worked very hard, let's see if we can get the beginning of it. So here we are, looking from the bow of my boat backwards with the masts on cradles. And we're currently going up part of the Champlain Canal. And oh my goodness, look, there is a map of what the US looks like. So I'm going to pause it here for a second. And people ask sometimes, why did we go to Champlain? And there are a couple answers. One, I had hoped, can you guys see my mouse cursor?
Yes.
Good answer. I had hoped very much that we would be able to take the boat from down here in Annapolis all the way over to Mackinac Island, which is a heck of a trip. But we couldn't do that because COVID came along at that time. And then after some thinking, I realized that it was just going to be really difficult and cumbersome. So why not choose another project that was just as difficult and cumbersome? So I did. And I decided that we would go up to Lake Champlain. And Lake Champlain, if you are familiar with it, is on the border, border between Vermont and New York. Another reason I wanted to go there, I grew up in Cleveland down here, and I've always been sort of an aficionado of the Great Lakes. And I'm also a little bit of a history buff regarding the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War was the war that was fought before the Revolution. So if I take you back to about 1754, what you're seeing here under my cursor, Canada, and this part of the United States was under French control. So was Louisiana. After 1757, the French and Indian War ended with England taking over France's territories. So Canada became under English rule, and so did the West as well as the colonies. Now, the important thing about the French and Indian War was at the very beginning of the French and Indian War and through the times of the colonies, there was no way to easily go back and forth or up and down. There were no roads. So Lake Champlain was one of the very major highways. And let me get us adjusted over here for getting north to south. So you can see here we are in Lake Champlain. This distance being about 120 miles, you could easily float down here and attack anybody else who's in the area. So the French built a fort down here, Ticonderoga. Having said that, let's move over a little bit and take another look. Now, somebody's got their radio on.
Yeah, I think it's Chris. Has his mic on. Chris,
Come on, Chris.
Not me. My mic is muted.
the other Chris.
I didn't know there were two of us.
Oh no, there are more Chris than that. Oh no. So anyway, having said that, back where we need to go.
Pennsylvania.
And
CBS News has learned behind the scenes, former President Trump has uncovered.
thank you very much. Okay, so we're talking about Fort Ticonderoga, which is down here at the base of Lake Champlain. Then, after the colonies revolted, those revolting colonists, Fort Ticonderoga was kind of ignored until 1775, when the colonists attacked Fort Ticonderoga and took it over. And this is where we get into Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys and Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold was one of the really darlings of the revolution until he turned bad. And he actually, with Ethan Allen, attacked and took over Fort Ticonderoga. The Green Mountain Boys got bored and went home after a heavy drinking spree. And Benedict Arnold created what's known as the first Navy for the United States. So let me get over here. Boom, boom. Benedict Arnold got two small ships and he sailed them up here, hiding behind Valcour Island. During this time, the British wanted to attack down through the Richelieu River, coming down through Lake Champlain. So they were building a fleet of vessels up here, and Benedict Arnold and the boys were hiding back here with 4 little schooners. Eventually down came the British. There was a great big fight, and Benedict lost. Poor Ben. He retreated down, being chased mightily by the British fleet, jumped out of his boat and ran away down here. He lived to fight on at Fort Saratoga, and it was the Battle of Saratoga that convinced the French to join the colonial war effort. And therefore, by losing the battle, it is said that Benedict, losing the Battle of Champlain, is said to created the victory for the colonists. Okay, there you go. There's your background on that one. Let's get over to where we need to be. So let's move along. Why things were going. The Erie Canal and the Champlain Canal were built about the same time. The Erie Canal was created to make an easy transit from New York up into the Great Lakes. First, Lake Ontario through Oswego, and the rest of the Great Lakes through, I can do this, Lake Erie. You can't go from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario without falling off of Niagara Falls, which is why they had to have 2 separate canals. About 3 years ago, we took a family trip on the Erie Canal. Great fun. Rented a couple canal boats. The nice thing about a canal trip, you can't get lost. Likewise, the Champlain Canal was designed to connect New York with Montreal right here on the St. Lawrence River. So that canal was built and completed about 1827. Now, in the middle of Lake Champlain is Burlington. And I decided Burlington was going to be our end point for this particular trip. So this is the trip we took. Trip went from Annapolis up the bay through the C&D Canal, down the Delaware Bay, up the Jersey coast, and then up the Hudson River into Lake Champlain. Woo! So here we are in a lock, waiting for the water to come in and all the drama to happen. For this particular trip, let me get over here, boink. This is a picture of us looking down the Hudson from way up the river, kind of near West Point, a little above there in Cornwall. And during this trip, I had 5 different crews. We had a crew of 4 to take the boat up to Catskill, a crew of 3 to take it through the canal up to Burlington. Then my grandkids joined us with their parents. We were now a crew of 6. And then we came back down with a crew of 3 and then finished off with a crew of 4 again. Each time I take a trip like this, I write a book. And I'm going to walk you through the book. And if you get bored, just hang up. It's all good. So having said that, looking down, let's go to page 1. Woohoo! All right. So the way I'm going to do this, I'll just read a paragraph once in a while, and then we can talk about how it went. So what a day it was yesterday. Once we departed Port Annapolis, we set the spinnaker, turned off the engine, and plowed God's furrow for 8 hours straight to the C&D Canal entrance. It was glorious. The wind was between 15 and 20 knots from the southeast, and at times we broke 8 knots over the bottom with a foul current of 1 knot. Not bad at all. It was controlled, quiet, and one of the loveliest and longest spinnaker runs I've ever had. As we entered the canal, I saw dark clouds building to the west. With temperatures in the 90s all day, there was no doubt a storm was brewing. I called ahead to Schaefer's Marina, and the guy said he had room and would wait till we arrived 1/2 hour after his closing time. And good to his word, as we approached Chesapeake City and the bridge, my radio lit up. It was the dockmaster asking about our arrival. We told him we were there, and he said, "Scoot along, there's a storm coming." We got there, tied up, added some water, and watched as lightning began striking all around. We scurried below and then were hit by a terrific microburst. The winds must have gotten up to 50 knots, and the boat was heeled hard against the dock. In the midst of a heavy barrage of rain and hail, the staysail was worked loose a bit and began flogging like there was no tomorrow. Then, just as soon as it began, it was over, leaving us licking our wounds and wondering just what the hell that was. In the end, there was no damage, and we policed the decks in the morning. Whew, dramatic one, huh? About that. So anyway, that was happening, and you see the bridge here, and here are our crew members up there. How about that, huh? Let's zoom in on that because it's fun. Nice. Well, here we go. We now enter the Delaware Bay, a body of water I truly dislike. And we're getting down the Delaware Bay a bit. And here's what happened. We've been skirting nuisance rain showers all day when around 5 o'clock, we looked over our shoulders and saw a long, heavy wall of cloud approaching from the west. It was obvious it was going to overtake us, and I began to deploy our cockpit enclosure curtains. Ed and I had zipped one into place and were working on the second when I looked up and the cloud wall was approaching. This formation was about 200 feet above the water. Above that, the clouds were a perfect 90-degree wall that looked like it was made of cinder blocks, the same color and texture. The wall extended hundreds of feet in the sky, and below was a perfect maelstrom of flung spume, waves, and chaos. The squall came on us with a vengeance reserved for ex-spouses, and even under bare poles, we were laid over with the rails awash and the wind screaming like a banshee. Ed and I struggled to put the enclosure panels in place, but since they are not yet labeled, it was guesswork as to where they went. The rain came in sheets with doses of hail just to keep things interesting. As we struggled with the panels, I clung to them with dear life because they're fairly new and the sting of paying for them was still in my memory. The wind was screaming across the cockpit. Dan was clutching the wheel, trying to make out our position on the chart plotter. We were rounding a small island in the bay, and the screen went blank. In a fit of frustration, he called, "The screen's gone out." I pushed back to the helm, straightened out the display, when a particularly ferocious blast laid us over. I yelled, "Header down," and Dan turned us to run with the wind. The relief was immediate. and we held on, waiting for whatever came next. Meanwhile, hang in there. There we go. Here's more fun. Meanwhile, Kevin, who was sleeping below, had been scurrying to get our bedding equipment out of the rain that was blowing through the companionway. I don't mind telling you, that was a pretty hoppy time. Well, the whole thing lasted. Things went okay. We got out. And in the end, we ended up having a nice sunset at Sandy Hook a number of hours later. So that's kind of my trip out of the Delaware Bay. One of the places I really don't like very much. Well, we made ourselves out of Sandy Hook and started up across Raritan Bay. And that's where we're going to pick it up here. So we pulled out of Sandy Hook about 8 o'clock in the morning, bound upriver for our 2-day trip to Catskill. Within the first 10 minutes, the radio lit up. Adventurer, adventurer, this is Evening Star. I responded, we switched to channel 19, and can you believe it? It was a couple from my dock at Port Annapolis, Denny and Sue, on their first long distance cruise. We had a jolly chat on the radio, and then it was time to wish them well on their trip up the East River while we continued north toward the Champlain Canal. Well, up we went, puttering out of the lee of Liberty Island. I headed us over to the base of the battery at Manhattan to show the guys the shoreline. We marveled at the crazy architecture on the river as we dodged traffic. As an added bit of excitement, there was a heavy passenger-carrying high-speed boat called the Beast that was charging around the harbor with a captain on a headset microphone who was incapable of answering the radio. The Beast, oh, let's zoom in on the Beast because that's always fun. Here we go. There's the Beast. Nice. There you go. The Beast ignored our radio hails and continued speeding up the Hudson. We were making our way upriver in our stately way when, looking to my port, here comes the Beast, 90 degrees to our path at about 40 miles an hour, headed straight at our midsection. I was the stand-on vessel, but his speed made any effort on my part to avoid a collision futile. On they barreled, the distance decreasing rapidly. I heard the passengers scream, and the captain, awakened from his reverie, throttled down at the last possible moment, throwing a heavy wash that bounced off our bows. Stupid bastard, I wrote down here. There we go, a little something. Well, up we went on the river, and we've now passed West Point in this picture here. We're in Cornwall, but let's pick it up here. Slowly, slowly, the character of the river changed, and we moved up, going from urban to rural, riverine, pastoral scenery in about 2 to 3 hours. As we moved northward, the beauty of the Hudson sat upon me, and I could see just how the Hudson River School of Painting came into being. The mist pooled in the hollows of the mountains like breath from a child on a cold day, and the sun set through the clouds in a cacophony of pastels. It was truly deeply moving, and it made the trip for me. Some 60 miles upstream, we came around the corner, and West Point reared up into the clouds like the castle of the Wicked Witch of the East, complete with turrets, crenellations, and gray-hewn stone walls that created a bastion-like fortress into which willing souls enter and army officers emerge. It was imposing, to say the least. We ran around the corner, ending up in Cornwall, New York, next to the Cornwall Yacht Club in a small cove with a mud bottom, slightly off the path of these reversing currents. God, I hope the anchor holds. We had a nice second dinner of fettuccine Alfredo, told jokes, tall stories, before we toddled off to bed. Another day will be upon us soon enough, and we 4 old men need our beauty rest. Woohoo! And now we begin pictures of taking the boat apart. And I don't mind telling you, taking 2 masts out of a boat is a real pain. So Dan is holding a boom, and we've got Eddie screwing something with his thing. We made it up to Catskill in these pictures. And this is the little marina we went to, Catskill Riverview Marina. Kind of funny that as you go up, the facilities get more and more primitive. And this was the last place that had a crane big enough to lift our masts. So, having said that, let's see where we were. It was a day of sweat, toil, heat, and camaraderie. Bonhomie, if you will, all centered around the Chinese puzzle, that was taking down the 2 masts of the schooner. It was like a giant Rubik's cube-like exercise in 3D geometry with real-world consequences. One mistake and the results would be disastrous. Luckily, I had my 3 guys plus 3 from Riverview Marina to help, and the job, while complex, went surprisingly well. It just took time. My biggest concern was the mainmast, which passes through my galley countertop. One misstep here, and the galley cabinetry would be ripped out. I passed a strap around the mast and another around the engine, pulling them toward each other with a block and tackle to mitigate this, and I'm glad I did. Each mast slid out without a problem, and we ran around disconnecting one thing and tying up another as we settled the 2 masts with the aft-facing spreaders together. And by 16:30, both sticks were down and on their cradles, and it was up to our crew to finish the stepping down. So what happens? You need to put your masts on cradles, of course. We got to Riverview Marina, and we had been assured that there was lots of wood to use. And he pointed us over to a wood pile that looked like a whole bunch of pallets had been cracked up. And he said, "Go to it, boys." So there you go. And I left 2 of them to fix it up, and the 2 of us went shopping for straps. After that, it was time to take that boat upstream, and we've had a change of crew at this point. This is my friend Ed. Ed has stayed on from the first crew, and my wife Diane has joined us, and here she is tucked away in our main salon. So we turn the page, and there's Diane and I. And look here, I was worried, very worried, about finding the confluence between the Erie and the Champlain canals. And sure enough, as you can see, there's a great big road sign that says, "Hey, stupid, turn left to go to Erie, turn right to go to Champlain," which I did then, and all was well. And let's get back to where we want to go. So, upriver, we went towards Troy. Troy is the last stop of the tidal Hudson. So tide rises and falls all the way up to Troy, something like 90 miles up. Went to Troy, alternating between showers and steamy humidity. At times I felt we were explorers on some sort of futuristic Orinoco, where as we cut through the jungles, the natives had developed their subsistence plots from cities that had now fallen into different levels of decay. It was a bit odd to see riverside towns turned into hard scrabble places where once dreams and plans had been made, now faded. Still onward we went until finally, like sighting Oz in the distance, loomed the federal lock at Troy, gateway to both the Erie and Champlain canals. Now, Jean, as a guy back at the marina, had warned me that the federal lock is different than the other locks in the system because it didn't have any ropes for the crew to hang on to. Rather, it has long pipes that a crew member passes a loop of line around and then slides the rope up the pipe until you reach the top or bottom of the lock. Well, I guess the tender saw Diane pass a line around the pipe at our stern and began filling the lock. And Ed, meanwhile, wasn't close enough to reach his pipe forward, and the boat began to twist off the lock wall and drift toward the opposite wall. Now, it's considered good seamanship to stay attached to the wall in a lock's turbulent waters. But we found ourselves adrift, being pushed sideways to be pinned against a lock wall without our fenders, which we were positioned on the other side. To make it more fun, my main mast is now down and protruding about 10 feet past my stern. Any sharp turn will dig the mast into the sheer, mud-encrusted, lichen-laden, hull-eating concrete face of doom. It was quite the dance as Ed and Diane pushed off and I twisted and prodded the boat with alternate bursts of forward and reverse, sprinkled with additional shots of the bow thruster to keep her away. Finally, it was over, and we were 15 feet higher in the river, joking with the lock tender about being newbies, while in our hearts, wishing lightning would strike him down for not letting us get situated. There you go on that one. Oh, it's the lovely Diane. Check it out. So we made it up through the first lock, and it was nighttime. And we came to the first place we could actually tie up, which was cleverly called the Lock 1 Marina. And I think there's something in here. It is a ridiculous little marina. bought by two guys from New Jersey, and they had also bought a forklift. And they spent their time moving heavy rocks around the marina and lighting them with colored lights to make little grottos. So we got there in the rain and we walked ashore. You'd have to read the whole book. But anyway, walked ashore and it was pretty ridiculous. When you walk in the bathroom, there's a street light. And as you open the bathroom door, the street light, it's a full-size street light, goes from green to red, and a klaxon goes off. And now you know you're in the bathroom. Then if you want to go down to the bar, which there's nobody at the bar, we went to the bar and there's a dead campfire. So we pulled up these strappy little chairs around the dead campfire. And I continue. Last night we sat under a soggy wool blanket that had been used as a rain tarp earlier that day, staring into a dead campfire with extinguished coals as cold as a mother-in-law's heart and as black as daddy's work shoes. The faux flickering tiki torch flames framed a pastel Caribbean-style direction sign proclaiming, "Now serving whatever you bring," and led the eye towards a tarp-covered beer tap, which bore an uncanny resemblance to a drunk leaning over the bar just before last call and an imminent trip home to a long-suffering wife. This is how you keep a ship's log, in case you wondered. It's all good. So anyway. And we visited with Ed's sister, Betsy. Betsy is absolutely stone deaf. She has hearing aids, but she dropped them in a puddle that day. So dinner was spent yelling at each other. Well, here we are at Fort Edward, Lock 7. Fort Edward is awesome. And turns out one of my crew members grew up near there in Lake George. We got off at Fort Edward and he found a guy he knew and they started talking. So anyway, we pushed off from Fort Edward after a great stay visiting with Ed's sister and bid farewell to about 60 defecating Canada geese who seemed fit to decorate our concrete dockage with various randomly strewn care packages, demonstrating just how well fed they were and how content to remain just where they are. Around the corner, we went into Lock 7 and it was peaceful, drama-free rise. We didn't realize it at the time, but after Lock 8, we had passed the highest point of the lock system. After this, everything was literally downhill. And let me tell you, my friend, going down in a lock is a lot more fun and controlled than going up. No more horsing around in straight currents as concrete walls intimate imminent doom and the bow thruster giving its all gives one pause when thinking about its ability to keep up. After Lock 7, we left the remains of the Hudson and entered the Champlain Cut. This is actually the cut part, the actual canal between the top of the Hudson River and the base of Lake Champlain. As the canal narrowed down, I realized there was no turning around as the channel narrowed down to a width little less than the length of the boat. Amid the lush green verdant undergrowth, one could almost see Native Americans lining us up in their bow sights, hoping to pick off the intruders before they could bring the modern world forth. Finally, we were squirted out in the lower reaches of Lake Champlain. With a great huzzah, we chugged up the lake, bound for Lex's house, my cousin, some 60 miles north. We were a little late getting into the lake, beset by headwinds, and as attractive as it was to arrive amid fanfare, Blue Angels flyovers, and to be fed by the natives and worshipped as gods, we chose instead to drop anchor at Button Bay State Park, 10 miles short of our goal. So that's what we did, and up we went, and you can see there's this great boat my cousin Lex has. It's kind of this old oyster boat here, and he has pimped it big time. So you've got this little Dodger here and lots of stuff, and here's Lex driving Diane around, and the name of the boat, accurately enough, is Old School. Got to love it. So there you go with that. We're now in Lake Champlain, and as you can see here, the boat is alongside Lex's dock. And we stayed there for about 2 days. As you can see, we had a jolly time playing the guitar and hanging out on each other and just kind of goofing around, because let's realize it, guys, It's about the people we meet and the places we end up, as well as all the suffering we have to get there. Now, interestingly enough, I'm not sure you can make it out very well. Let's see. Ah, there it is. We were anchored by the bow and tied to Lex's dock. Hard to make this out, but when we pulled up the anchor, there was a wad of weed as big as you can imagine. I couldn't get the anchor above the water level. So that was our entertainment at, can I get over here? The Shelburne area. And let's see what we got here. Yeah. So I say we're about to leave Lexus. We clambered merrily onto Adventure, intent on casting off and heading out. The stern lines were let go and I began to gain on the anchor line. As the chain came up, more and more seaweed gathered at the stem head, flopping downward onto the anchor chain, only to get hung up on more weed below. By the time we managed to get the anchor to break the surface of the water, there was so much weed on it that the windlass wasn't able to pull the whole shebang up. It was like having the swamp thing clinging to our anchor, and try as I might, I couldn't dislodge the stuff. It was too far down to reach effectively, and we couldn't get the anchor up any higher. Well, by now, we'd horsed around for about a half an hour and gone 100 feet from the dock. Time for a new tactic. I drove the boat back to the dock head first. We tied up, but as obviously the only way to fix the problem was from the dock, while off the boat. I called Lex. He came down with, can you believe it, a weed whacker. And in he went, plastic cords flailing at soggy seaweed, splattering splutteringly over the operator and his equipment. Lex would cut with the whacker. I would tear the stuff with the boat hook. And after about 20 minutes, we managed to clear the anchor. Lex pulled out yet another battery-powered piece of apparatus, a pressure washer, to blast the Champlain clay clear, closely closing with his hosing, while primordial ooze and seaweed guts flew to the four winds. It was amazing. I'm telling you, man. There we go. So let's see, where are we now? I think I've gone to, nope, there we are. So we got out and we went up to Shelburne Shipyard. Now, Shelburne Shipyard is the only place on Champlain that had the equipment to put our masts back in. Shelburne has been bought, like so many other marinas around the country, by Safe Harbors. And Safe Harbor, I think, bought it, and they just put it on the back burner to fix later because it was pretty run down. And I had looked on Active Captain to see what the thoughts were, and people were not happy with it. So there we go. What a day. I'll go to sleep happy tonight and satisfied with the progress. First of all, a deep and heartfelt thank you to Andrew Connell at Shelburne Shipyard. He made everything go smoothly and had our masts installed within 2.5 hours. Incredible. I'd heard some negative things about Shelburne, and those comments drove me to call and discuss my concerns. The marina has been bought by Safe Harbors, and now the focus is on selling memberships. This means that service takes a back seat. On the phone, after banging my way through a national level membership department, I was finally given the local number from the marina and connected with both Becky and Andrew, with whom I discussed my concerns. I think it worked because they treated us wonderfully. The marina is a little bit run down, and nonetheless, they still had the chops. Once the masts were up, teetering on 2 loose shrouds, the mast crew moved on, leaving us yahoos to clean up behind them, running lines and reeving sheaves, sorting halyards, lazy jacks, zipper trolleys, and blocks, and generally putting everything back together. If you can believe it, we started at 9 and we're finished by 4 p.m. Fabulous. I thought we'd finish tomorrow after lunch. So there you are. Once we had it in, it was time to move up, and you're seeing the lighthouse here at the entrance to Burlington Harbor. And I waxed poetic for a moment. How many shades of blue are there in these mountains? Remember, it's misty out here now. We're settled in, gazing across the water as clouds scud across the purple-hued sky before a rain shower, with mists moving mistily, mysteriously into the mountain valleys, as they have for millennia along paths trod by the Iroquois and Huron since before the French and Indian Wars influenced the nationalistic ambitions of European nations bent on subjugation and conquest. Oh, God, just love that crap. cracks me up. Well, anyway, welcome to Burlington. How are we doing on our time here? Not too bad, not too great. Got to Burlington and we said goodbye to Eddie, and in come the grandkids and our children. We got together with them and decided that we were then going to head north after playing around in Burlington for a while. We're going to head north to Burton State Park. So we loaded them up in the boat and off we went. Up we go. What a sail. The sail was magnificent as we left Burlington. And we're going, let's see, a little quick reference here. Oh, we've lost. Yep, never mind. We have managed to lose the map. The sail was magnificent with the breezes between 15 and 20 knots as we headed for Valcour Island, the site of Benedict Arnold's spirited action against the British in 1775 before he turned into the greatest traitorous villain of the Revolutionary War. We gave him a hearty huzzah as we jibed in front of the island, and then it was up to South Hero Island to the Gut, a break between the two islands that allows passage into the inland sea of Lake Champlain. The inland sea is a large enclosed body of water above Burlington with many islands and very deep. Let me see if I can get the inland sea back up for us here. And the answer is doink, doink. And there we go. So if we take a look at Lake Champlain, you're going to see Shelburne is here. We've now gone to Burlington. Then we've gone to Valcour Island. From Valcour Island, we've gone north along Grand Island or South Hero, through the Gut, right over to here in St. Albans Bay. This whole area here on Lake Champlain is known as the Inland Sea. So we're over to Burton Island State Park at this time. There we go, boink. Having said that, let's get back to where we were. And there we go. So we had a blast at Burton Island State Park and did all sorts of fun things that you do with your family. We went out to walking beaches. We stood on, went up on the thing. There was this great little area here, and we had a dandy time. That's sort of like a snack bar. And I'll give you another quick read here. Good day today. It started a bit rough. Around 1 o'clock, the wind picked up from the northwest and the boat began horsing around. I have to say, we had reserved a mooring up at Burton Island State Park. And when we showed up at the mooring, the park personnel threw up their hands in horror because I was about 20 feet longer than the boat they were expecting. And so we weren't allowed to pick up the mooring and we had to drop our anchor in, God forbid, the weed. Nonetheless, moving on, we're at anchor now. And here we go. The wind picked up from the northwest. The boat began horsing around on its anchor, first to the right, then to the left, each time brought up by our anchor and chain. I had neglected to rig my anchor strain gear over the bow. So instead of having lines take up the strain, I had the apparatus led over the bow roller. This, of course, caused no small amount of rumbling, grinding, groaning, and chain-style complaining through the rest of the night. Diane and I are sleeping in the bow right under the forward hatch, so it was easy to pop up and check for a dragging anchor. But it made for a night of broken sleep as I poked my head up whack-a-mole style ever so often to gaze bleary-eyed at a non-distant shoreline with drifts of rain showers combing through the trees and pattering my pate in a most disagreeable manner. In we went to the dinghy to grab breakfast ashore. Now, the park has a small sort of country store which serves a takeaway breakfast and lunch and stocks lots of camping necessities like beer, slingshots, lighters, Reese's peanut butter cups, hair scrunchies, and frisbees. It's run by a woman named Juanita, and she's just charming. I did the old guy thing of sitting on the front porch by the doorway, sipping coffee and chatting with anyone who looked like they needed it at 8 o'clock in the morning. The only thing missing was Opie and Aunt Bee. So there you go. And here's a little cafe thing there. Here we go. Where are we now? Up, bum, bum. Did I get? boom, here we are eating s'mores. S'mores are great fun. And we rented canoes and Diane played. You guys remember a spirograph? You put the little pen in those gears and it spins. Well, Diane and Joan are doing spirographs right now. Super fun. A jolly time was had for all. After s'mores, it was time for a round of ball cap frisbee. Now, there are chain baskets throughout the park areas designed for frisbee golf. They stand like scarecrows in the wind with yellow tops and offer fine targets for frisbee golfers, hurling their plastic discs into their chain-linked jaws. Having no frisbee, I decided the best course of action would be to toss my ball cap around, which surprisingly worked pretty well. The fun started as Cameron and I tossed the hat back and forth. Soon we were joined by Chris in a tossing threesome. Then, as things got routine, the game shifted to head golf. See if you can catch the hat on your head. This is a perfect game for a 9-year-old because you get to throw stuff at other people and watch them wiggle around wildly to get underneath it. Great laughter ensued as we directed our barrage toward the girls with such variations as catch it on your finger and toe catch golf. There you go, which gives you an idea what my trips are really like. So here we are on Burton Island, exploring the island. Chris, our son-in-law, is a really good cook, and here he is cooking away.
Maybe.
When I remodeled the boat, I was determined we were going to have a microwave and that it wasn't going to spill the soup. So if you look closely, I put the microwave on a swing, and it works great unless there's a box stuck underneath it, which case it springs merrily off the thing and onto the floor. Nonetheless, let's move on. And here we are. We had a great time, and then we made our way back down towards Burlington. Burlington. As we all know, you need a day to take care of your laundry. And this is one of the great exciting things that you do in a new town. You find the laundromat. So we found the laundromat. Now, for weeks, I had been kidding my grandson Cameron about going north to Vermont to watch the sturgeon wranglers as they wrangled the bass on their sturgeons. And I told him we would buy him a saddle for a sturgeon if we caught one. So we managed to make our way into an aquarium. And you can see down here, it's not a sturgeon, it's a pike, but they did have sturgeon in there. It was great fun.
Maybe.
So the great thing about this laundromat, they had, the service, wash and fold service, right? So we went up to the sturgeon, I looked it up, and they have wash and fold. All you have to do is take the laundry up there and email the woman. Now think about the time lag there. You don't call her, you email her, you leave your laundry there for 2 or 3 days, and maybe she'll get to it. We did it ourselves. It was okay. So down we went, we got the same spot we had been in earlier, and then we took the kids to a science center. So much fun. Burlington also has a little area with a plaza fountain where the water squirts up your dress all day long, and it's random. It goes all over the place. Kids had a wonderful time goofing around in here. We then managed to make our way. Chris and Elizabeth fancy themselves as great beer aficionados. So the kids always hate it when they get dragged to a brewery. Here we are at a brewery. It rained like hell. The boat was open while we were away, and we got back, and oh my God. Nonetheless, we all had ice cream anyway. We sent everybody packing home, and as a typical father only can be, here's Chris with everybody else's bags, carrying him through the airport. We're now halfway through. Oh my God, how's my time? Oh, my time is getting short. I'll be fast. So it's time to take the mast down now. So we've lost one crew. Actually, we've lost 3 crews. And it's now time for the crew from Lake Champlain down to Catskill. So I had some guys join us there. 2 old friends of mine. One, my cousin Lex, whose house we had visited earlier, and another one, a high school friend who I hadn't seen in years and years. So tomorrow we get off the boat, I say, and head for home. It's been a great week. And let's get back there. That's not what I wanted to read to you today. So let's move on. We got the mast down, as you can see over here. And I say, we're a motorboat again. Dawn slid stealthily, slyly, almost shyly under my drowsy lids, pushing them up, up, ever up, until open-eyed, I went forth to confront the day. It was 6:30 in the morning, and even though I had 2.5 hours before the fun began, time slid by like my little brother on the family slip and slide on our lawn back when I was a kid.
Trip is a trip.
Yeah, trip is a
He's
trip, man.
sneezing now. I mean, when he sneezes,
Oh,
blood clots coming out of his nose. So that's very attractive. He went like this onto the bed. And like, what? I was like, disgust. I mean, it's like the big blood clot all over the sheet. I was like, oh my God. And then you got to watch where you're walking because he like hooks.
you gotta watch that because, you know, somebody is got their microphone on and we're hearing your interpersonal life.
Yes, look at her.
Mhm.
Anyway,
This is a CAPCA meeting.
Mm.
Guy
Yeah.
doing a Lake Champlain cruise.
yeah.
So
Hey, Mark, you're unmuted.
Oh my God, Mark, it's been great fun, and I hope you get over the blood clot. It's all good. So here we are making our way.
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. We're down at the end of Lake Champlain, and it's a really interesting area. We got down to a bizarre little marina at the base of Loch 12. As we approached the marina, there is two semi-drunk guys waving at us, going, "Over here, man, over here. Tie up over here." And a horrible place. So I write, I'm a little boozed and standing on a rickety floating dock with non-skid green paint flaking off weathered gray boards and curlicues of verdigris sloth. There's a plastic owl on a piling to keep off any snakes that might appear, and the code to the bathhouse is 9700. We have a pool table, a jacuzzi shut down by the COVID restrictions, a bar, and built-in friends under a tin roof with orange bug repellent bulbs and flypaper dangling in curlicues, while our masts hang over a ramshackle crisscross powerboat that is sitting mysteriously low in the detritus-laden foam accumulated at the base of the loch's spillway. Mac has offered to buy us drinks. Mac is one of the guys who told us to come aboard, over to the marina. We've taken out fried mozzarella sticks, declined a chance of getting into a bar fight, and are enjoying the prospect of a spaghetti dinner served by Bill. All interested parties may apply within. Well, a trip to the southern end of Lake Champlain is a fascinating and wonderfully beautiful passage through grasses and reed beds reminiscent of the African Queen. As you go through the 20 miles of this marshy area, the thought comes to mind of the early settlers and how things looked so many years ago. Egrets, herons, osprey, fish, and they fish like they've done since the beginning of time, while butterflies and various bugs dip and dodge the fish, leaping for them with ravenous abandon. Cliffs slide by as conifers and hardwoods, clinging to their faces, vie for the sun, competing for the very limited real estate. Woo-hoo. So we're getting ready now to go back through the locks. And it's important as you go back through the locks to build these fender boards, because the lock walls, of course, are concrete and very worn away, and they will gouge the heck out of your boat. So here we have Lex is making a fender board, 2 fenders and a little extra board there. And then we're loaded up, and as you can see, boom, there we go. And we enter the lock, and there's Bill holding on for dear life as things start to swirl around him. Well, down we go. And, oh, there's one last bit of amazingness. Yeah. Oh, now here I am sitting just after having had my dinner. On the light breeze, this is where at the marina still. On the light breeze, there's a child screaming at his mother over by the pool near the RV section of the marina, roundly answered by his mother, who has just had it up to here and is ready to pull the plug on her offspring's short life if he won't comply with her outrageous demand to get the hell out of the pool now, or when I remember who your father is, you'll be in very big trouble. You just wait till he gets home. Ah, marina life. You gotta love it. Well, we made our way down and came back to Fort Edward, Lock 7. And here the 2 guys are eating away, having a dandy time, and you can barely see it, but this is the boat at night, moored to the sidewall of Fort Edward. It really was a great and beautiful place. And then, wouldn't you know it, boom. Let's see. Cocktail hour came about while Lex fiddled with the stove to thaw the evening's meal. We settled down to review our lives to that point and solve the riddles of the universe. It's very comfortable to be with my two oldest friends, and stranger still to have stories from high school pop up like unexpected mushrooms in the forest of our common memories. Then Frank came by. This is Frank here. With his dog Ginger, a young hanger-on named Harley, yes, named after the motorcycle upon which he was conceived, and Chris, his semi-mute sidekick. Frank is 3 years clean of a heroin addiction, something he proudly told us while offering us a joint after he settled on the edge of the dock, legs dangling, telling us about drawing portraits of musicians, and a long rambling story about having lost his dog Ginger at a rock concert a while back. We had met Frank 5 weeks ago as we passed through Fort Edward going north, and he greeted us back as if we were long lost family. Apparently the town dock is a prime hangout for him and his entourage, and we were greeted as old friends worthy of a gam and to be welcomed to town with open arms. What a character. And indeed, it's the characters we meet on these trips that flavor the stories. And there we are again. Now it's time to head down. We're heading down past Troy. We head down the Hudson, past the lighthouses. Oh, there's our boat. And we end up back at Catskill Marina, and we're met by the 3 Pauls. So now my 2 crew members have left, and I got 3 guys named Paul. We have, don't tell me, Paul Carroll, Paul Geddes, and Paul Gray. Now, when you get a boat like this, with a crew like that, it's very hard to call people by their first name because they all answer. So we went to the English thing and everybody was Mr. Great fun. One little mishap, and I'll cut this short pretty soon and let you guys get back to your dinners. But we're coming down the Hudson just before we get to Catskill. During the third hour, a large powerboat southbound going just the wrong speed, not planing, not slow, but plowing about a 3-foot wall of water rumbled past us, casting a mini tsunami of rolling water from astern. I told Bill to turn away and slow down. However, we were restricted in our channel and needed to head back to good water to avoid grounding before the wake struck. Needless to say, as we turned, we took it on the beam, the worst place to take a large wake. The boat lurched to starboard, leveraging 1,800 pounds of mast that way, and then the port roll whiplashed the entire rig to port. There was a cracking of wood and a deep, wicked wobble in the cradles as the masts did what physics required them to do. I heard cracking from below and just waited for both masts to tumble to the deck, rip off the lifelines and stanchions, and basically drag us to the bottom, like the dreaded Kraken on a rampage bent on revenge after a bad morning in the boss's office. Anyway, we lived through it. It was fine. And here we are putting the mast back up, getting ready to go. And we're assembling the boat once again. Here's our crew for the assembly. Great fun. And boom again. Now here's an interesting place. Let's get over here. Come on now, machine. Oh, it's jumping. Don't jump on me. There we go. This. Yes. This is an armory that was moved from New York City. So we're now on Cornwall and Hudson, our anchoring spot for the night. I looked to the eastern shore and I saw a large castle-like place. Intrigued, I took the boat as close as we could go and took in Bannerman's Island Arsenal, a large munitions storage castle left over from the early 1900s. Apparently, Bannerman was a munitions magnate supplying the needs of the First World War, and he kept his explosives in warehouses in New York City. Now, you can understand how the good people of New York felt about tons and tons of explosives being stored in their fair town. So Bannerman was invited to move his weapons supplies out of the city. He alighted on Popel Island, built a castle, filled it with explosives, and now it's decaying back into the dust, but still stands with guy cables holding it to the surrounding rock, waiting for the day of reckoning when it all blows to high heaven. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. Yep. Well, here we are going past West Point again. It's pretty imposing as you see it from this point, and not many people get a good shot of that. We passed West Point and of course went down through New York City again, seeing the Statue of Liberty, always great fun. And I had been contacted about 3 weeks before the trip, and some old friends came to join us while we were in Sandy Hook. This is Al and Marilyn Dunning, who had met at my sailing school when I had a sailing school back in about 1984. They saw we were coming up on Facebook, contacted us, and actually showed up and bought us dinner. Woohoo! It's great fun. And here is, of course, Al and Duncan looking old. Al's great quote, we had a race once, and he got lost in the fog down near Harrington Harbor. And he called him and said, Chesapeake Sailing School, I'm lost, I'm lost. I said, Al, where are you? He said, I don't know. I said, Al, where were you the last time you knew where you were? And he radios back, my bar mitzvah. Anyway, that's Al. There you go. Well, we left Sandy Hook, motored on down. The wind died like nobody's business. The heat came on off of Cape May. And here's a picture. This is the view. It was flat as a pancake. The humidity must have been 98. Salt crystals were forming on everything, and we're motoring through this. It's awful. This morning, we were encased in humidity and stifling heat, plowing through the haze like a snow plow, cutting an opening, which closed behind us as soon as we passed through. Breakfast was broken out. It was oatmeal and crescent rolls with Gruyere cheese and pepperonis. Tasty stuff. The only thing that has made these last hot days bearable has been my air conditioning, which has been running constantly in the cabin. Once off watch, the crew dives below, gasping for drier air and a chance to cool down. It's been 3 years of remodeling to get to the boat to this point, where it was comfortable in these conditions. And I have to say, everything is working beautifully. Thank God. Almost there, kids. Hang in. Boom. Here we go. Well, we made it all the way up the Delaware Bay without a storm. It's a miracle. Up to Schaefer's Marina, where again we got pounded by a storm. But after the storm, we had this great rainbow, and that was super fun. No problems there. During the night, I had a line come loose on my stern, and the boat wagged away from the dock. Seriously, with the anchor roller and the anchor over the dock, and the boat was being held to the dock by our electric cord. So I made up an story. Time? Yep.
Yep.
All right. There we are. We made it home, goofing around on the way, hanging around in the bosun's chair, and were greeted as we arrived home by the two woodwinds, whom I used to drive around. They came by and taunted us mercilessly, and in we went, and here we are. To finish up, it's been a remarkable trip, 7 weeks out, 1,200 miles, round trip to and from Lake Champlain. We've been past the headwaters of the Hudson, passed up and down the Champlain Canal, dropped and set our masts twice, hosted 5 crews, and entertained 2 of our grandchildren and their parents. We've had 3 terrific long sails, made new friends, and reestablished friendships with old ones. We've watched the sun rise and set over different horizons and expanded our souls with joy and travail. May our lives be forever so. Oh, there we are. And I say to you all, huzzah! There you go. That's
Oh, that was fabulous, Duncan. Thank you so much. Hey, I was curious about that when you were talking about when it was really hot and the no wind
oh,
and the haze. Was it like that picture where you could only see almost like a fog? Only I don't know, a few feet, 100 feet of what in front of you?
it was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
Oh.
Anyway, anybody got questions, or have you all gone home to sleep?
Yeah, Hans has a question.
Yeah.
Duncan, this is Johan. Well, this is wonderful. I think Johan is absolutely right. You spoke twice about currents, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Once, well, you spoke about the stray currents, and then I believe a current at your anchorage near Cornwall. Did you have any other currents, expected or unexpected, that gave you any problems, and how did you deal with those?
No, it was just fine. As you guys probably remember, there is a very good current that comes out of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge on your way up to New York City. And that current can get up 3-4 knots at a time. But if your boat makes 6 or 7 knots, you're going to be all right. The buoys are just laid under and buried under the water. As we made our way up the Hudson, of course, when the current's with you and it's going to shift twice a day, you're going to be boosted and retarded along the way. But it really gives you a lot of respect for the people who went up there with only sails, because the boat would drift up. And I guess if I were those guys, the boat would drift up with the current. I'd drop my anchor and wait for it to reverse again and drift me up more. Because man, it gets pretty narrow up there, that's for sure. And then when we get up to Cornwall, where we anchored for the night, in that bay, as the currents shift, they tend to swirl.
Mm.
Found ourselves 90 degrees to the wind, which was blowing about 15 knots, and the current was pinning us against it like that. So it's hard to tell just how your anchor is setting, because the boat's being pushed up the chain at the same time it's being dragged down the chain by either the wind or the current. But obviously all's well that ends well. Here we are.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Duncan.
Yeah.
A question from Chris. When was the last time you were able to sail as you went north and then you had to motor?
Well, the last time we were able to sail was really Sandy Hook, because there was no wind on the way up. On the way down, once we hit the Tappan Zee, we opened up the sails, and it was just freaking glorious. You had a beam reach with 5 sails up, and it was just fantastic.
Terrific. Thank you.
It was amazing. Here's something interesting. We passed a tugboat in the Tappan Zee. Calls me on 13, and I'm trying to arrange a pass. Says, how about a 2-whistle pass? He says, absolutely. Is this Duncan? I went, what? He said, yeah, I used to be a schooner captain, and a friend of ours told me you're going to be up here. I've been looking for you. So I had a great talk with this. Yeah, I never had a talk with a towboat guy like that. It was great fun. He says, your boat looks great. And I said, well, yours doesn't. He said, I know.
Duncan, I just have a comment. Well, I was fortunate to be another one of those people that saw West Point from the river. Some years ago, I was second mate on the Half Moon, and we sailed from Verplanck, New York, up to Albany.
Yeah.
And we passed by a lot of those spots you were talking about. And that was great, because we had about 21 middle school kids on board, and they did all the work. So, but yeah, I know exactly how you felt seeing all that up there.
It's pretty scary, and it makes you never want to go into West Point. It's a scary looking place.
Duncan, is your cruise log available for the public?
It is. As a matter of fact, this is a published book, and I have a free version electronically. So yeah, I'll send that link over to you. Great fun. Great fun. I do.
Duncan, Tom Stoller. Duncan, Tom Stoller. One comment about the Catskill and the lumber piles. I was up there this summer on a Packet 42.
No way.
Yeah. I think about looking at your dates, we probably missed you by 1 or 2 days. At any rate,
Oh, man.
there's another marina up further up the creek from Riverview called Hoppinose Marina. That's where we ended up.
Yeah, up
That evening, we were at dinner, we ran into another boat southbound, as you know, 45, and coordinated a trade of his rig. So in the morning, we rafted up to him at Riverview and just transferred his rig onto ours, bypassing the project of engineering a custom rig for your boat. So no log, it was no wood pile, just taking a used rig that was coming south. We were heading north and made the swap in about a half hour.
Tom has a crazy story. I'm gonna have to hear about that more.
Yeah. Thanks, Duncan. Good presentation.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Anybody else? No jokes? Come on, guys. Kick it in. Anyway, if you care, I'll send a link over to Yvonne and thank
Yeah,
you.
we actually, we do have it. We do have it. So I think we'll get it in the log.
Great.
And so if people, we'll do a review of your presentation, but of course your book is going to be way better. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking I have 2 takeaways, something about rage only left for ex-spouses. Thought that was pretty good. You had
And-
another one that I thought was pretty,
A heart as
Wonderful.
black as daddy's work boots.
yeah. So anyway, it was full of those gems, which I'm sure we're all going to enjoy looking through.
Well, you know, as we get older, we tend to forget things. And especially for my grandkids and my crew members, it's nice to have something sitting on your coffee table and say, oh yeah, when I used to be able to walk, I did that, or something along those lines. So
Well, Duncan, thank you so very much again for sharing your time and expertise with us. I know, and we're all aware of your sailing prowess, but I'm not sure all of us knew what an entertaining author you were.
Oh.
So I am looking forward to clicking on that link and reading your experiences firsthand. And we can't thank you enough again for being here with us tonight. And for all of you on the call, please register for the annual meeting next month. Register by November 21. And we look forward to seeing everyone in person for the first time in a while. So thank you all so very, very much. And have a nice evening.
thanks, everybody. See you later.
Thank you, Duncan. Bye-bye.
Mm.